us. The gospel is about a family and being part of it together. And I think that's what makes the gospel so beautiful when we get it right, that this family of misfit toys can come together and work together and solve anything together. The family of God is one of the most beautiful things about the gospel when we get it right. And it's the ugliest thing when we get it wrong. There's nothing that hurts quite as much as when this family that we should be finding our hope and our grace and our truth in falls apart. Because we know that it doesn't exist in the world. It can only exist in God. And that's why we have to get this right. There's another thing that we're going to talk about through the book of James, and that is being wholly devoted to God. And James draws on two sources throughout this book. The first source that he draws on a lot of is that he's basically writing to us out of the book of Proverbs. He writes a lot of times like Proverbs are written. James hits a number of points instead of making one long argument about them. Other letters, like there's this clear flow. James is kind of like, and another thing, and another thing, and another thing. But secondly, there's a lot of this letter that mimics the Sermon on the Mount. And almost every point he makes can be paralleled with what Jesus says in Matthew 5 through 7. Almost like James heard his brother give this sermon once, and now he wants us to get the implications of his teaching. James wants us to get what it would look like if our lives actually looked like Jesus was our king. He uses words like holy, completion, perfection. That Jesus is trying to shape us into his image, that we are becoming Christ-like. That's what James wants us to see, to love Jesus and to love others, that our actions would actually line up with our words. I don't know if you know this, but a while ago, people used to think of Christians as hypocrites. Obviously, none of us. That we've gotten over that. But it used to be a common criticism. Clearly, I'm joking, but James is confronting this, and his goal isn't to judge us, but he wants to learn from him as someone who didn't always get Jesus. He wants us to get that we want there to be congruence between actions. And it's important we get that in this letter, that James to get us to understand what this looks like if what we actually presented itself in our life. And we understand wisdom so focused on what we do that there's no room for error or empathy or immaturity. Martin Luther, who led the Protestant Reformation, he questioned if it should be in the Bible. He's called it a right strawy epistle. And a lot of that, though, was based on his background in Catholicism, where they